and welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'll be your host. So, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the one, the only Dancing Queen, the movie 1994's Muriel's Wedding. So, this movie is near and dear to me. I am acting president of the Toni Collette fan club, and I enjoy her so much. I probably first saw her in probably Hereditary, actually. But I know she was on United States of Terra back on Showtime, and she's in Sixth Sense and all that stuff. She's a very acclaimed, known actress. But hearing about she was in Muriel's Wedding, and I'm thinking, what the heck's Muriel's Wedding? So when I found this movie and I watched it for the first time, I was just blown away by Toni Collette and also Rachel Griffiths as well. I myself am a huge 6 Feet Under fan, and seeing Brenda Chenoweth have her Australian accent and being in one of these big breakout roles for her is just amazing. So now, this movie, the argument can be made of whether it's a cult classic or not. I personally think it is, because even though I think it did pretty all right, like financially, and, it got good reviews for the most part, I guess. It seems like it's within that niche, similar to, it's Australian cinema. It's one of I see like the holy trinity of Australian films that kind of made waves in America a little bit too. That would be Muriel's Wedding, The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and then Strictly Ballroom. Those three films are touted as like Australian cinema that came over to America and also did pretty well over here. So I do think it's within that niche. I also just think, there's plenty of people who really love this movie and love the film. PJ Hogan is a great director. And, I really do think that, like the queer community really seems to like this film. I think different women seem to also like it sometimes, depending on who you are, I guess. And there's plenty to kind of get from this as well. So what we'll do is we'll go over a few figures of the film. I'll give a couple little fun facts, and then we'll move into a plot summary. So Muriel's Wedding was released September 29th, 1994. That was the Australian release of the film, although I think it might have even premiered at Cannes or somewhere around there. And then the US limited release was on March 10th, 1995. So this movie was released in Australia in 1994 and then was released in America in 1995. But I tend to say that it's Muriel's Wedding 1994. We're looking at an estimated budget of about $9 million, and we're looking at a wide gross box office of $15.4 million. This information I at least got from IMDb, so whether it's valid or not, take it for what it is. But I've also seen that it made box office of like 50 mil at one point. That probably came from like home video sales maybe as well. But this movie did pretty good at the box office, it seems like. We're looking at a Rotten Tomatoes score of 80% on the tomato meter and 84% on the audience score. We're also looking at a IMDb score of 7.2 out of 10 and a Letterboxd score of 3.7 out of 5. So I've got some pull quotes from critical responses at the time of the film and even a little bit after. So we're looking at Hal Hinson from the Washington Post, who states, "It's a bright, buoyant comedy about a very sad young woman, and regrettably, the mix just doesn't work." We then have Alex Sandell from Juicy Cerebellum, who states, "So overrated, My Big Fat Greek Wedding for the 90s. I myself haven't seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, so I don't really know what to compare, but, whatever." And then we have Todd McCarthy of Variety, who states, "Most of the action is played for broad laughs, and Hogan demonstrates the ability to generate them, even if the humor is base and often cruel, making fun of people's looks and ineptitude." So I've got some fun facts about the film. You may have heard, may have not, but we'll just go through a few of these. This movie was filmed October 1993 into February 1994, putting Toni Collette at age 21 and Rachel Griffiths at age 24. So this is very early in their careers. The writer and director, PJ Hogan, wanted to use the music of ABBA in the film. At first, permission for this music was denied by the band. The director apparently promised to fly to Europe to plead his case. Permission was then granted, as long as the band received a percentage of the profits from the film. And actually, this is what IMDb is saying, but somebody's putting it on there. It apparently helped inspire the very successful Broadway show that is Mamma Mia. I cannot claim that validity, but I will just say I'm not surprised. I mean, hey, whatever. But I don't really know Mamma Mia like that, so I think Muriel's Wedding's a little better. But that's just me. Toni Collette had to gain 40 pounds in 7 weeks with the help of a dietitian for this role. She had only been in one movie, I think, before this called Spotswood, which she actually starred with one of her family members in this movie. I think Perry. He was in the film with her as well. But she did have to gain some weight. PJ Hogan actually based Muriel's personality on himself, and Muriel's actions, though, were inspired by his sister, who embezzled $15,000 from their father and disappeared to Sydney to live with a friend. So that actually did happen, I guess. Bill Hunter, who plays Bill Heslop, was actually filming The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert at the same time, where he plays a role in that. Requiring him to have different length hair, beard, and to be in different parts of the country. So that must have been crazy, but he was a big deal, of course. The photographs in the Heslop Family album that they have, I believe that was later on in the movie, are actually photos of the actors who portray the family. So they're like childhood photos of them. Porpoise Spit is, of course, a fictional town, but it is inspired by Tweed's Head, New South Wales, Australia, where director and writer PJ Hogan grew up. So I definitely think this film in particular, I mean, it does have a certain cult following. I've seen folks who, there's this one YouTube video, I think it's of these guys at their wedding, and they literally have done the Waterloo dance, and they've choreographed it to perform at their own wedding. So I think in a way, like, there are different people who really like this movie. I think the queer community seems to like this movie, maybe because Muriel is like an outsider and she just wants to be different. She wants to change herself, but then she finds out that really nothing... life doesn't matter unless you're living it for yourself and you're living it with your loved ones. You know what I mean? So I really think that that's like a huge part of it. I think also, people who really love like film and, love that Australian cinema, that kind of broad humor, might really like this. But it's no surprise. I think this is a cool coming of age kind of tale for, young people in their 20s. I think we've all, maybe not all of us have felt like Muriel necessarily, but I'm sure some of us have. And also, you can just connect with her. And I think also too, part of this is that, Muriel is not exactly a likable character. Throughout the whole film, she's a pathological liar, and she's a swindler, and she's kind of selfish. But ultimately, once everything kind of falls all around her, she then realizes like she's got to do something to change this, because she's just not going to end up in a good place if she just keeps running from herself and lying. So I definitely think like, this film, I think, has a cult following for a reason. I think it affects people in a way. And it's just something that I personally really connect with and enjoy. Plus also the use of ABBA in this movie, chef's kiss. Like, it's so good, like, throughout all of it, but we'll get to that while we're doing the plot summary and everything too. And let's move on to that plot summary. We open the movie on a title card that says The Bouquet with a blue sky in the background, and we see a bouquet coming right to our faces. We then hear the song Sugar Baby Love, while these women are trying to catch this bouquet that's being thrown at a wedding party by Tanya. And then we meet Muriel Heslop, played by Toni Collette. And then we hear Tanya, played by Sophie Lee, say, "Who caught it?" And then one of her blonde friends says, "Muriel caught it," or whatever. So we're introduced to Muriel and Tanya. We're then introduced to Cheryl, played by Roz Hammond in her debut role. We are also introduced to Janine, played by Belinda Jarrett in her actual first and only role in a movie. And then we are introduced to Nicole, played by Pippa Grandinson, and also Chook, played by Nathan Kay. And so Muriel is told, well, don't be selfish, Muriel. Shane's been going out with Cheryl's been going out with Shane for however long, so she should get the bouquet. And then Cheryl breaks the news that Shane and I broke up last night, and she runs away, and now Tanya has to go console her. And then you see Nicole and Chuck making eyes at one another, and then they go inside the house, and that'll come back in just a minute. So then inside the house, you see Muriel getting a piece of cake, and she's taking it. She's walking through the living room or whatever around the party. She then meets a man by the name of Leo Higgins, who I'm not sure who plays him, but he is this gentleman who is trying to talk about her dad. Her dad will meet in just a little bit. But he also has this weird growth or weird burn on his nose. And Muriel literally says what happened to your nose? And he's just like, what? And he's like, sunburn, that's all. So that's weird. Oh, Leo Higgins is played by Rob Steele, I believe. Anyway, but you then see this woman looking at Muriel in her dress as she's walking downstairs, and then she then apparently calls the police because this woman is in her retro glasses, is named Dion, and she's a senior store detective. Meanwhile, Muriel then sees Nicole and Chuck in the laundry room on the bottom floor of this house, just screwing. So literally, Chuck just got married to Tanya, and he's now screwing one of her friends. So that's great. And then the police come to the wedding party and confront Muriel about her dress being stolen, because the senior store detective we just met apparently said that her dress is stolen. And then she is taken in a police car to go home. We're then introduced to the Heslop family. We're introduced to Bill Heslop, played by Bill Hunter. We're also then introduced to Betty, played by Jeannie Drynan. We meet Perry Heslop, played by Dan Wiley. And then Joni Heslop, who's played by Gabby Milgate. And we meet all of these folks who are Muriel's family. So Muriel's brought home by the police, and then Joni's sees her pulling up in the police car. She just says, "Muriel's back." So then Bill is talking to the police officers and pretty much schmoozes them. He has Muriel try to go look for a receipt for the dress, and then she's just sitting in her room. But then Bill is schmoozing these police officers because he has connections. He knows one of their fathers or whatever, and he actually just kind of sends them on their way with a couple a case of beer or something like that. So you start to see that this is kind of what Bill does. He's a local kind of politician dude, or he ran for local government, so he seems to be a kind of known face in the community. We then see Muriel in her room. She puts on Dancing Queen, and she just very monotonely sings along, "You can dance, you can jive." It's that kind of thing. So you can already just tell that she's probably not the happiest of people. She might be a little down on herself. You then go over to the Heslop family, goes out to dinner at a place called the Rickshaw Room. You then note that, they're sitting at a place, at a table together. You see some Japanese gentlemen with them as well. Bill is apparently helping them try to get some developments being done in Porpoise Spit. Porpoise Spit is where this family lives at. And he actually gets the food for free because of the relationship that Bill has with the owner, Victor Chan, I believe, of this rickshaw room. So you can tell that this kind of is like how Bill does his business in a way. He schmoozes people, he gets connections with people, things like that. Bill is talking about how Muriel and Perry are unemployed, they're on the dole. And he's talking about how Muriel went to secretarial school. He paid for it. She comes out, couldn't even type. He tries to get her a job with some place. After a month, they have to can her, and all that kind of stuff. And then Bill just calls his whole family useless. So you can just tell that he is just a fun, happy guy. Anyway, we're then introduced to Deirdre Chambers, who is played by Jenny Nevinson. And Deirdre is talking about how she's a beauty consultant with Radiant Cosmetics. She then also is casually racist and says that, oh, well, you're she's talking to the Japanese men, and she's all like, oh, your wives must know all about that. They must be geishas. So that's fun. And then she just kind of ignores Betty for a minute when Betty literally says to her, she's like, Deirdre, you look great. And, Deirdre doesn't say anything to her. But then she is talking to her a little bit. And then you see Deirdre come up to Muriel and offers her a job with Radiant Cosmetics. You can already tell this is like an MLM type of scam. But anyway, you then move on to the group going to a bar, and they're all sitting together. So Tanya is crying because she's found out that Chuck has cheated on her. Pretty much what happened is that, he couldn't get it up to, consummate the marriage. And she tries to go and blow him pretty much. And she finds lipstick. Then he's saying he has an affair with Rose Biggs. And all she does is suck him off out of respect for her. So, she's a real good friend, apparently. So then the girls are talking about, like, I'm supposed to be blissful. I'm married. I'm supposed to be blissful, blah, blah, blah. And one of the girls is like, cash in your tickets to Bali and come, on holiday with us. The girls are talking about going on holiday to Hibiscus Island. And then Muriel's all like, well, what holiday? And so the girls then talk to Muriel about them not hanging around with her anymore. But they did let her finish her orgasm drink before they told her this. So I was like, okay, that's nice. And then Muriel is, talking about like, well, I can change, and, I'm trying to be like you. And because they're telling her, they're like, you don't do your hair the right way. You're fat. Like, you don't wear the right clothes. You listen to 70s music. We listen to the Baby Animals and Nirvana. So you can then see that Muriel is getting just so upset and down on herself. And she then just says, like, I'm not nothing. And it's crazy because nobody has said that she's nothing. Nobody said that at all. But you can tell that this is kind of how she feels about herself. And she wants to say, like, I'm not nothing. So, her friends have kind of left her. She's kind of at a bit of a real kind of a rock bottom, if you will. You then see a scene of Perry playing soccer in the backyard, where then Bill just yells at him. He just yells, Perry, wake up to yourself. Because he's just like playing soccer with like a milk carton or something. And then Betty is talking to his, her husband. Bill tells Betty to give a blank check to Muriel so that she can get makeup to go and sell for, Deirdre Chambers and all. And Betty comes into Muriel's room and gives her a blank check. She doesn't know where her to fill it out, but Muriel just tells her, fill it out to cash. One of my favorite lines is that, I don't care what these people say. Betty's telling about that, and Muriel's just like, who what says, And she talks about like these terrible women at the post office. I'm just like, oh, okay. And Muriel tells her mom, she says, Mom, I'm going to be a success. I'm going to get married and I'm going to be a success. And her mom even says, like, I know you will. And so you can tell that Muriel and her mother, like, they do have a nice little relationship going on, which is then all the more tragic of how the story kind of unfolds. So then we go to Hibiscus Island, and I am kind of talking about these girls, this group of friends, as like the blonde bimbos, if you will, because that's kind of what they are. They're dancing to The Tide is High, who I believe that was the Go-Go's that kind of did that, I think. Anyway, so they're like watching the other people at this little like dancing competition, and then they see that Muriel has actually come to Hibiscus Island. So then they just go over to her. Muriel is just like, chilling at her little table, and she's like, "Oh, hi, fancy seeing you here." And then Tanya just like throws a drink in her face. And then one of the girls, I don't remember which one, maybe it's Cheryl or somebody, but she just says, like, while she's wearing this like banana bra and all, she just says, "You've got no dignity, Muriel," which I thought was like super funny. So then you see Muriel is at dinner, and she's just like chilling with her little sunglasses and her little red top. And then this woman who has this like short black hair and these sunglasses just like looks at her for a minute, and you see that this is Rhonda, because she is asking, "Are you Muriel Heslop?" And she's like, "No. Why?" And so she's like, "Yes, you are. It's it's me. It's Rhonda Ebersol from, Porpoise Spit." And Rhonda is played by Rachel Griffiths, the one and only. She's asking you, like, are you married? Like, whatever. Like, if you're not Muriel Heslop, like, you must change your name or something like that. And Muriel's then talking about how she has, she's engaged. She's engaged to a guy named Tim Sims. Who apparently, from the IMDb trivia, it says that name is like a play on Tim Tams, which is like a little treat in Australia, and then dim sums, which is like a kind of Asian food that is to Australia. So it's like Tim Sims. It's kind of funny. But anyway, so Muriel and Rhonda are talking about, oh yeah, they're talking about, my Rhonda's like, "Oh, my life is just one fling after another." And then Muriel's like, "Oh, remember Tani Dagano? She got married to Chuck." And be like, "Who's that?" Like, "Oh, Peter Vanille." And then they're talking about these blonde bimbos and everything. And then, what is it? So you have, you see them over there. And I love that scene where Muriel and her see it. And Muriel's just like, "I do see them. They're over there." And then they have this little conversation of just like, "They're here for Tanya's honeymoon. Chuck couldn't come." And they have this like little look at each other. And then we have one of the most iconic scenes in really movie history. One of them. Rhonda sees the nice blonde, the mean blonde bimbos, this pool, and she just is like, "Tanya," and then they're like, "Oh my god, I haven't seen you since Porpoise Spit High." Be like, "How are you? Muriel told me you're married. Turkey, right?" And she's like, "Chuck." You're like, "Chuck, right?" And so, then Tanya's asking them, she's asking Rhonda, like, come have a drink with us, "If you've changed, I'll tell you. I'm honest. Unlike some people, I tell the truth." And then Rhonda's like, "The truth. I tell the truth too." And then she pretty much says, just, "Nicole's having an affair with Chuck. Muriel saw them fucking in the laundry on your wedding day." And she just says, "Stick your drink up your ass, Tanya. I'd rather swallow razor blades than drink with you." Which is just such an iconic scene. And she also mentions, "Oh, by the way, I'm not alone. I'm with Muriel." And it's just such an iconic scene because for anybody who's ever felt picked upon or bullied or any of this stuff, if only you could just, go up to these people and tell them off like that. It makes your heart sing. You know what I mean? Which then we go into this nice, fun Hibiscus Island star search with the group Faba Abba, made up of Muriel and and Rhonda, singing Waterloo. And so they're just like singing this song. One of the fun things about this scene, I really enjoy the fact that Nicole has a black eye from an earlier fight with Tanya, because you see these girls like in the audience for this. And then you also see like throughout this like dance number that there's some points that like Muriel and Rhonda are just looking right in the camera. These actresses, I guess, are just directed to look right in the camera. And it's just so fun and camp in a way where I'm just like, oh my God, this is wonderful and great. And then so Tanya and Nicole start fighting in front of this group because Tanya's just pissed and mad. And so then, Muriel and Rhonda are just living their lives and they love it. And so then you see that they win the competition. I also think it's weird that there's just like some guy dressed up as Robin from Batman and Robin. I don't know what he's there for, but I always kind of wondered that. So then you see that the Heslop family is out at the rickshaw room. You see that Perry is reading a postcard that Muriel has sent them. For some reason, Leo Higgins is at the dinner as well. I don't really know why, but he is. And I think Perry says under his breath, like, P.S. I'm a fatso whale. Which is just like a brother doing that. Anyway, so then Deirdre Chambers comes to the dinner as well. And she kind of sits there and people are all like, oh yeah, Deirdre got a job from Muriel with Radiant Cosmetics. And she should be thanking you, Deirdre, because of all this. So then this is where Deirdre and Bill are talking. They are talking at the slots. And you see the first inkling of maybe there's something going on between her and Bill. But Deirdre just kind of points out that hey, look, Muriel only got this much stuff from me. So if she had sold these things, she'd only have $30 of a profit. She would not be having $3,000. And Bill's like, what the hell are you talking about? She's on a $3,000 holiday. What do you mean? So then, of course, this is kind of she's exposed as Deirdre exposes Muriel, pretty much. So then that just kind of puts into motion what's going to happen. But then Muriel and Rhonda are at the poolside at nighttime. Muriel asks if she could be famous. Maybe I could be an actress. I'm mental enough. And then the girls just sing Fernando by ABBA, while they're looking up at the night sky at the moon. And Muriel then asks, so they're both kind of singing a little bit. And she then asks Rhonda, she says, do you ever think you're nothing? Sometimes I think I'm nothing. Useless. And then Rhonda is telling her that she's a success. Somebody wants to marry you. You've made it. You're amazing, So then you see Muriel, you then hear Fernando, the actual song playing, and then that gives us back to Muriel going back to Porpoise Spit, to her family. So she's back at her Porpoise Spit home, and then Joni is there. Her mom's there. Joni then says, you're terrible, Muriel. And her mom is all Daddy's so mad. He's right at the bank right now. Somebody took all of our money, $12,000. You didn't do anything with those checks, da-da-da-da. And then Muriel's just of course I didn't. But then Muriel just literally leaves. And she gets back in the cab and she just, leaves. So we're in Sydney, City of Brides, and we meet Bryce Nobes. In the Videodrama store that Muriel is now working at. Bryce is played by Matt Day. She's working at Videodrama. I kind of wish I worked at a video store back in the day. I wasn't able to. But anyway, Muriel meets Bryce while he's coming in to get videos. And she asks him to join the Video Addicts Club because he takes out a lot of videos, takes out too many videos. And then Bryce asks her out for the first time. And she's just like, oh, okay. So then you see Muriel gets a call, and it's Rhonda, who works right across the street at a dry cleaner's. She's like, I don't have any blokes to go out with us tonight. And then Muriel's all like, I have one right here. And then Rhonda's just like, I can't really see him. Can you have him look over here? And then Muriel just says, can you look over at that dry cleaner over there, please? So then you see that, they're just scamming on Bryce a little bit to take him out to the club. So Muriel and Rhonda, they go out to lunch, and Muriel says, I'm going to change my name to Mariel. And then while they're at lunch, Muriel just lies about Tim Sims coming after her, saying oh yeah, he said that if he ever found out where I lived, he'd shoot the person I was living with, and then he'd shoot me and then himself. So she's just lying about Tim Sims at this point. But again, she's with her friend. She's with Rhonda. And then you see Rhonda, Muriel, and Bryce out at the club. Muriel says, Rhonda changed my life. And then Rhonda takes home these 2 American sailors. She says, don't do anything I wouldn't do. And then you see Muriel and Bryce dance in the club. So again, you can see that like this time Muriel, like she has a nice, like she's got her nice hair going on, like she looks real good, like she's really blossomed since she's came to Sydney. We're then introduced to the flat that they're living in. It's coming home from the club. So Muriel and Bryce have tea, while, Rhonda and the sailors are very loudly, audibly having sex. So they're just having a threesome. So then you see Muriel and Bryce, they're watching the news about Hibiscus Island, that there's like a pretty much hurricane or whatever the equivalent to Australia is. But there's like this big tropical storm going on at Hibiscus Island, and Muriel's all like, me and Rhonda went there. And then you see Bill Heslop on the TV. He's talking about like, you hear a little bit of it where it's like, oh yeah, like his daughter like went away and like ran away. But then Bill's on TV asking for Muriel to come back home. We don't care about the money, all that. And then Muriel and Bryce just attempt to have sex on the beanbag chair that they were sitting on, which could not have been comfortable, but they did it. They tried to do it at least. This is where you find out that Bryce is a parking inspector, which, is okay, cool, fine, whatever. So then you just hear, Muriel laughing because she's just like, what the hell? Like, I can't even, like, because Bryce is trying to like take off her shirt and try to take off her pants. He accidentally unzips the beanbag chair, and like all the beanbag insides just kind of come falling out. And then all this commotion has the sailors just run out with their bare asses to the camera. They're just naked as anything, naked as hell. And then they ambush Bryce because they think they're like, he's just assaulting her or something, right? And then Rhonda just like, comes out. She's like, what is going on? But then she falls on the floor just like randomly, and she says she can't feel her legs. And so because of this, Rhonda is then rushed to the hospital in an ambulance, with Muriel having just like laughed, like, well, she was just like, is this even real? Like, once she says that, Rhonda can't feel her legs. So then Muriel is at the hospital with Rhonda, and she calls home to Joni. So you find out through this phone call that Bill has moved out of the house and is living in the hotel. He's blaming Betty for all of this issue because of the blank check that was given to Muriel. And Betty is talking to Muriel. She's like, we hadn't known what happened to you. We thought you became a prostitute or a drug addict. They're just talking about how they're falling on hard times and all, and that, the Heslops are then raided. The phone, once they get off the phone with her, they're just like raided because there's like an inquiry going on. And this is where we find out that Bill is actually in Sydney for the inquiry and all that. So we find out all this information. And then we get Rhonda getting a diagnosis of a tumor. And for some reason, they don't seem to know that a tumor normally means that you have some sort of cancer. One of these has like one of the fun lines that I like. She's asking, like, how did I get it? It's nothing to do with too much sex, is it? Like, I kind of love that line. It's just so silly. But then she's like, oh no, I have cancer. Like, oh my God, I'm going to have to eat macrobiotic food or whatever. And, I think she says something about, I don't remember exactly what she said, but, talking about diagnosis. But at this point, you just think like, okay, this is like a discrete tumor. Like, it'll be fine. There's some risk to the spinal cord, but, it won't be as bad maybe. So then you see Muriel walking past a bridal shop, and she makes her first lie to this bridal shop, saying that like her mom is in the hospital with a tumor on her spine. You then hear this like beautiful Dancing Queen instrumental music in the background, which is really nice. And then she also says that her wedding is going to be in September, which is spring, which I think is a little backwards for Australia. I believe that some of their seasons are a little different than the US. Because when I watched that for the first time, I was like, wait, September is fall. But I think it's the opposite for Australia, it seems like. She then tries this wedding dress on, and the bridal shop takes a photo of her because, they normally don't do this, but your mother just has to see how beautiful you look in that dress. And so then Muriel makes a wedding album of her wearing these dresses. and it says our wedding on the front of it and all, and she's just doing this for God knows what reason, but it's what she's doing. She feels good about it. So then you see Rhonda is trying to learn how to walk again at her physical therapy, which Muriel has come to. And Muriel, Rhonda's asking, like, how can you stand to be helping me like this? Like, you help me dress, you help me eat, like, you help me do all this stuff. Like, how do you stand it? And Muriel says, like, Rhonda changed her life. She used to just sit at home, sometimes she used to stay in there all day, and listen to ABBA songs. And now since she's come to Sydney, like, she hasn't listened to one ABBA song. It's because her life is as good of an ABBA as an ABBA song now. It's as good as Dancing Queen. And then Rhonda's like, oh, come off it. But then Rhonda asks Muriel to promise that they'll never go back to Porpoise Spit. Like, they're so much more happy in this situation than they were in their previous. And then, Muriel says, like, I promise, but you're gonna walk. Like, don't worry. So you have this, like, kind of, like, reassurance that maybe things will go right. Maybe it'll be all right. So then Muriel scouts out different bridal shops to go to while Mamma Mia plays by ABBA. So Muriel leaves work to, like, go try on wedding dresses. You see Rhonda is, like, having to go to her PT. So she's, like, going to go get her cigarettes, and then she's going to be leaving. She's looking around. And then Rhonda, as she's looking, finds Muriel's wedding album where she sees, like, Muriel in these, like, wedding, dresses, which is kind of weird and a little odd. And so then Rhonda goes out and is trying to look for Muriel at these bridal shops. She's trying to figure out, like, what is going on here? Like, I don't understand what's going on. So then Rhonda finally finds Muriel at one of these bridal shops, and she confronts her. And then Muriel pretty much come clean about everything. So like, are you getting married to Tim Sims or not? And then, Muriel's like, there is no Tim Sims. I made him up. And she's talking about how, like, everything is different. Like, once I came here, I changed my name to Mario. Bryce asked me out. And if that means that I got asked out, it means I'm not her anymore. And I'm not going back to being her again, and she's talking about Muriel Heslop, fat, useless, I hate her. And then she talks about, like, why can't it be me? Why can't I be the one, And in this scene, and then Muriel's just, like, sitting in this wedding dress crying, and then Rhonda just, like, leaves because she's just over Muriel's shit at this point. And this scene, I think, is such a good one. I definitely would say if this was ever nominated for an Oscar, it was not, unfortunately, but this would have been the Oscar scene they would have shown. You know what I mean? I think it did get nominated for, like, the Australian version of the Oscars. I think Muriel actually, Toni Collette actually won. This scene is a really good one because it's really showing just, like, how much Muriel, like, hates her old life and just, like, in a way still kind of just, like, hates herself because, like, she's just running away from it all. She hated that old version. She loves herself now, but does she really, though? Like, I mean, she's still just lying. She's just lying about everything. But but when it comes to how she was brought up and how horrible her father was, how checked out her mother was, it's not surprising that, she's making these horrible decisions as a whole, And so again, that kind of goes back to this idea that, like, Muriel is just not exactly very likable at this point, and which is interesting because she's our main character, and normally you're supposed to have a likable main character, which is why I think this movie in particular is just great, because you have this flawed heroine, you have this flawed character who you're supposed to be looking at, and you're not really rooting for her for a fair amount of this movie. Then we see Muriel is at work, and she gets a call from her father. And pretty much Muriel goes out to dinner with Bill and, like, his lawyers, I believe, at this rickshaw room, I guess, is where we're back at. Or we're in a similar area, I guess, or at least a similar restaurant or something. And pretty much Bill, her dad is now saying, like, she has to come back to Porpoise Spit. Like, I'll get you a bank loan. I'll get you a job at the Leagues Club, but you're going to pay for what you did, Muriel. And then Deirdre Chambers comes in. And I remember, like, I think it was that her dad just called her Muriel again, and she just yells, like, it's Muriel. You see that Deirdre and Bill are talking, and then, Muriel's just kind of sitting there, And then she just asks, like, are you and Deirdre together? And, like, she just asks, like, have you left mom for Deirdre? And so, yeah, like, she then asks, like, well, what about mom? And, you know, you can just tell that Bill and Deirdre are just kind of in for themselves. And Muriel's just like, all right, well, I guess this is what happens when I left and I did this. Um, so then you see Rhonda sitting in the dark of the apartment, just smoking. She finds out that she'll never walk again. So the tumor came back. So all this great stuff that happened before of like, oh, like, you know, you're going to walk again, like all this like hope and all this, you know, no more of that. She's now just gonna never be able to walk again. But again, you know, she's telling her mom, like, you know, Rhonda says to her mom, like, I'm staying here with you, you know? I'm staying here with Muriel, pretty much. And it's like, okay, fine, fine. So then Muriel, when she finds this out, she's looking through these personal magazines of personal ads. And she comes across this one she calls this guy, it's for a swimmer. So she talks to the swim coach, and she meets this guy by the name of David Van Arkel, who is a South African who's in Sydney. He is going to be playing in the swimming portion of the Olympics for Australia. But before he can do that, he needs to get married to an Australian citizen in order for him to get citizenship. The swim coach and David Van Arkel, they're sitting down and they're talking to Muriel. You know, David is just like, oh no, what about the blonde, you know, what about the black haired one? You know, what about the blonde? You know, oh, well, you were interested in her. I'm not so sure now, because he's just like disgusted by Muriel. He doesn't want to talk to her and like doesn't want to be with her. But she's like all down for it because she's already, you know, like she's lying a bunch. So that's one of the questions that the swim coach asks is like, do you think are you okay with being able to lie, kind of a thing? And she's just like, well, I could try. They talk about Kieran Perkins, and then she's just like, who? And apparently he was like a Australian swimmer of some sort. So obviously she knows nothing about sports or swimming, obviously, but that's fine. And then David's family is paying $10,000 to someone who can fake being a bride. So she'll do it. And then it's interesting because the swim coach is asking Muriel, like, you know, where are you originally? Are you originally from Sydney? She's like, no, Porpoise Spit. And he says, like, why did you leave there? And then Muriel just like talks very openly about exactly what she's been feeling in this whole film. And this is the exact quote. She literally says, well, because of all the mental things that happened to me, I got shallow. And my physical being could have been improved as well as my mentality. So, like, literally this whole time, you're just like, oh, you're very cognizant of what you're doing, I guess. Like, you're very, like, you know exactly what's going on. Like, what the heck? Like, you left Porpoise Spit for a reason, and you're very aware of why you left, but, like, still, you're kind of keeping up on the same stuff. You're on your same bullshit kind of a thing. But then you see Muriel comes home to the flat and she sees Rhonda asleep. And then she goes into her room and she listens to Dancing Queen, similar to how she was near the beginning of the film when she got brought home by the police. You know, it's like nearly identical to this scene. And so that's kind of showing that like this is something that's really Muriel's about to make like a not great decision, but she's going with it anyway. So she has this like identical scene from near the beginning, which I thought was really interesting when I looked at it again. So then you have Muriel's wedding. This is now happening in Sydney. Muriel's fake wedding is actually now happening at this church. There's been all this attention about it and all that kind of stuff. You see Rhonda and her mom have arrived. Rhonda is in her wheelchair and she's like, her mom's like telling her like go near the front. She's like, I don't want to sit up here, mom. And so she like just goes to the side or whatever. And you see that the bomb bimbos are back. Sans Nicole, though, they don't have her there. And they're now her bridesmaids. They're Muriel's bridesmaids. And, you know, they're asking, like, oh, what happened with you? And, you know, Rhonda just tells them, like, you know, well, I got cancer and, you know, they had to take the tumor out, but, you know, I won't be able to walk again. And Cheryl, with her dumb ass, she just says, like, he was so full of life. And then I love Rhonda's response of just saying, well, I'm not dead, Cheryl. And it's just so funny because of how she delivers it. It's so fun, and it's definitely a quote that I think a lot of people love as well. We then find out that Tanya is divorcing Chuck, so she's like, I guess I have you to thank for that. And hopefully I can repay you one day or something like that. So then Bryce shows up to the wedding. He's like sitting on Muriel's side. Deirdre's up at the wedding, doing her little makeup and all that, and then Bill's there, of course, because he's like walking her down the aisle. And then Muriel actually comes in. Mario comes in from her little car that she's been driving it around. She's been driven around in, and she comes up, and then Tanya looks at her and she says, "Mario, you're beautiful." So then the actual ceremony is getting started. So you have this wedding march of the ABBA song "I Do, I Do, I Do," which is honestly a banger. And I don't know about me if I ever get married, but I definitely want that at my wedding party. And I want that as my wedding march. God damn it. But anyway, so then you see Muriel coming down the aisle to this song, and everyone's kind of looking at her like, what the hell? Which is so funny because like this wedding is completely a wedding of convenience. It's a marriage of convenience. It's a green card wedding at this point. Or like, a citizenship wedding at this point. But like, Muriel's just as happy as a clam. She is just happy with what she's doing. She doesn't care if she is lying about all this, which we shouldn't be very shocked about. But then David's just freaking out. He's just like, oh God, I have to marry this thing? Like, what the hell? So then Betty finally shows up to the wedding where you see a Sydney 2000 little banner on the car, which I thought was kind of fun because, Sydney 2000, that was when the Olympic Games were, and that was their campaign. Because this was back in like, 94 or something like that. So, this is like their campaign to actually go and do this. So then the marriage actually happens, and, I think Muriel actually like corrects the priest and just says Mario. And they consummate it. They say, yep, I do, I do. And then they walk back down the aisle. David has actually never met Betty. And he thinks that Deirdre is Muriel's mom. Because he says, Mr. Heslop, Mrs. Heslop. So he just thinks that Deirdre's actually the mother when really she's not. Betty's like in the back row. And then, David and Muriel, they're walking down the aisle and they just kind of like, I don't think Muriel even meant to do it, but like she just doesn't even see her mom at all. And she just walks right past her, doesn't even acknowledge her. Betty had brought her a present, all this stuff. And Betty is just like, she just begins to cry, which is so sad. It's such a sad scene when you see Jeannie Dryan. Like, she's just like such a good actress because she, is just showing that like, oh my God, like what the hell? And then the bridesmaids are being fake as hell because they're saying like, oh, like we knew back in Porpoise Spit, we knew Muriel back in Porpoise Spit, and we were the best of friends, even though literally in the beginning like they were treating her horribly. So then Muriel's just like in wedded bliss and all, and she sees Rhonda with her wheels just like on the side of the church, and Muriel sees Rhonda in her wheelchair. She goes up to talk to her, and she's all like pretty much like they came groveling back to me, like I showed them. And then Ron's just like, well, you showed them what? That I'm just as good as them. They used to pick on me in Porpoise Spit. And at this point, Rhonda is just sick of Muriel's shit at this point. Like, she says, like, good luck with whoever his name is. And Muriel's just like, where are you going? And be like, what do you think? Like, you gave up on me. I needed help. I needed a friend. I couldn't make the rent. I couldn't do the shopping. Like, I have to go back to mom with, Porpoise Spit with mom, all that. And then Muriel just says like, I don't want you to go. I don't want you to go by bus. Like, I got you plane tickets for you and your mom. And then again, like, Rhonda is just like done with this shit. She's just like, you know what? Like, Muriel Van Arkel stinks. She's not half the person that Muriel Heslop was. So now you've just lost your friend in Rhonda, but then like the blonde bimbos come around, and then they're told like Rhonda's coming back to back home to Porpoise Spit. Be like, oh no, don't worry, Missy. Like we'll push her around, which is just so telling, obviously. But like you're just like, oh my God, like what exactly is going on here. But I think this batch of scenes as well. I mean, so it is the wedding and everything, but it's really just showing that Muriel is just so delusional, or she's just such this liar that like she's okay with all of this happening. She's so like single-sighted about what she's doing pretty much, which is just crazy. And I'm just like, yeah, but that's part of it. And again, she's showing that she's not the most likable of people in this situation. She's a little bit selfish, honestly. Yeah, and we're just thinking. And so what's crazy is that this is called Muriel's wedding, but it's like even when we get to Muriel's wedding, it's just like, oh my god, this is like a depressing wedding kind of because it's not even real. But yeah. So then you have David and Muriel are coming back to the apartment. This is where David has been living. His parents have been paying for this. So David gives the apartment tour to Muriel. He says, you can use everything but the weights, with the little gym that he has. Shows him his room, shows her his room, shows her room. And then, he's asking, like, it wasn't all just about the money, was it? And he asks, like, what kind of person marries someone that they don't even know? And then Muriel's just like, well, you did. Like, you did. And he then responds, he says, like, I want to win. All my life, I've wanted to win. And I love that Muriel just says back to him, like, me too. Because she's just always wanted to be somebody. She said in the beginning of the film, like, she's going to be a success. And in actuality, she kind of is a success. She's this famous new wife of this swimmer, and there's this media attention going on. So she kind of got what she wanted, I guess, which is fine. But then you cut back to Porpoise Spit where Betty has gone shopping. She steals some shoes while she's out at the store. So you see her walking, you see her feet, and you're just like, oh God, like those are not great shoes, or they're just too small, or she couldn't get a new pair or whatever. So she takes a pair and, wears them out of the store. She gets caught by that same senior store detective from the beginning. And you see there's like this split diopter shot of Betty's face and then Bill and the police officers behind her. It's really good. It reminds me of that shot in Carrie with Tommy and Carrie in the classroom. And then so Bill, takes her home. They're driving home, and she's even saying, like, she's literally saying to her husband, like, I meant to pay. I need help. And Bill is driving home, and he just drowns her out with the radio. He's not even listening to her at this point. So you can tell that their relationship is just at the end, and it's in the pits. So then you see Bill is packing up a suitcase, and he's leaving Betty. He asks for a divorce. Bill leaves. He leaves in the car, and then you just see Betty looking at it, and just like as he's leaving, and then all you see is just her son Perry is like sitting on the couch in the living room, or he's sitting on a chair in the living room, and she just looks at him, and she just yells at Perry. She's just yelling at him and hitting him with like a magazine, like a dog, like, get out and get yourself a job. You're an embarrassment. And then Perry's yelling back at his mom. He's like, you're the embarrassment, you mad bitch. And it's just like a whole thing, y'all. It was just crazy. So when you see then Betty is like in the, you see her in the beginning at the counter where she puts a counter in the kitchen where she puts a tea in the microwave to like give to Bill. You see her at that same counter, and she's just like distraught, and she just begins to cry. And it is so heartbreaking because you can tell that she's just like at her wit's end. And honestly, nobody seems to care. Which then goes into the rest of the movie, or the rest of the plot, pretty much. So Muriel is watching her own footage of her wedding while David is downstairs on the ground floor pool, outside doing a swim. And then Muriel gets a call from Joan, and Joan tells her mom's died. Dad said you have to come home. So then you see that there's these clouds, and you see that Muriel has to like fly back to Porpoise Spit. She comes back to the house, and you see that Muriel comes back. The family's just kind of all sitting around and they're in shambles. For some reason, I think the young one, Penelope, she's just like on the phone with a friend of hers being like, hey, yeah, the funeral's tomorrow. Are you coming? I just thought it was so weird. But anyway, so, Deirdre is cleaning up the house because they're still living there, I guess. And so, but the family's just like all distraught and in shambles about this whole thing. Deirdre, sits Muriel down and she says like it was a heart attack. She went peacefully. She talks about something about making the ultimate sacrifice. You made the ultimate sacrifice for her family, for your father's happiness. Now he's got, the judge will go more lenient on him. He's got kids to take care of or whatever. And at this point, I just wrote in my notes, I was like, Deirdre is kind of an actual piece of shit at this point, because I'm just like, oh my God, like you were cheating with this married man. And then now you're saying that his ex-wife at this point has now died. You're now marrying married this guy. And freaking like, you're telling his daughter like, oh, she made the ultimate sacrifice. Like, anyway, Deirdre was a piece of shit. I'm just saying, like, I can't even. So then Muriel goes and she discovers that the burned backyard, where literally, so the backyard from the beginning where Perry was playing his little soccer game, it's just burned because apparently he was supposed to like go mow it and he didn't. So instead of like having it be mowed, Betty just like torched it before she passed away, I guess. So then you see a scene with Joni and Muriel, and Joni's just talking about how like, what am I going to do without her? And like, here's her photo album, and she has this photo album. This is the photo album where I believe all the Heslop kids are like these are photos of the actors as actual children. You then find out that Joan knows how her mom actually died. And really, her mom died of suicide. She took pills, sleeping pills, and they were next to her when she was found. And then when Dr. Farrell, who is like the family doctor or whatever, came through, they were gone, which pretty much, I guess, means that like Bill had taken them or Dr. Farrell had taken them or something, because, like Dad's been through enough or whatever. Maybe he has been. It's just like so sad because, I mean, this woman was like yelling out for help. It's very obvious that she needed help, and nobody seemed to care about it, which is really sad. So then you have the day of the funeral, and you have a message from former Prime Minister of Australia, Bob Hawke, that, Bill was able to get, which is like all he seemed to care about. Because there were journalists there and they were writing down like, all of this. And it's just crazy because then like you can tell that just Bill has just been kind of all about himself this whole movie. And even when his wife has died, like the thing he's focusing on is the fact that he was able to get this message from a former crooked Prime Minister of Australia, which I thought was crazy. And this is when you see Muriel just runs out of the funeral. After the priest was saying like, Betty Heslop lived for her family, and her daughter Muriel's wedding to this guy, it was like the highlight of her life and all this stuff. And then Muriel's just running out of the funeral, running out of the church, and David's actually there to meet her at the front. Muriel then goes to her motel room on the beach motel, and she says, like, I'm just like him. I used to think I wasn't like him, but now I know I'm just like him. And then Muriel and David actually kiss for, like, the first time, actually, since the wedding. And it's implied, I guess, that they have, like, sex. They finally have consummated their marriage. But at this point, Muriel calls a cab to help take her home. And she says, like, I can't stay married to you, David. And she takes off her ring and she goes back to the family house. But before leaving that motel, she even says, which I thought was a really good line, she says, I can't stay married to you, David. I have to stop lying now. I tell so many lies. One day I won't know I'm doing it. So at this point, it's at this point that we're halfway through the movie. We're like a quarter of the way done almost. And at this point, Muriel has finally seen, the error of her ways. And she now realizes that everything around her has fallen to shit. She's lost her best friend. She's lost her mom, all of this. And she now decides, like, I have to stop lying. I tell so many lies. One day I won't know I'm doing it, which I think is a really, insightful kind of, in a weird way, it is insightful. And it's to be like, yeah, like that is a horrible character flaw of hers, but she's realizing it and she wants to do something about it. So, I mean, it is a nice little redemption for her, and I really do like that. It makes me feel for her at least now, where she knows where she went wrong. So then Muriel and her dad are in the backyard, the burnt backyard, talking, and Muriel finally stands up to her dad because he's talking about like, oh, you have to come back to, you have to come back and help with the kids and all. I don't know if I think Perry and Muriel are like the same kind of age, maybe. So there's that. But she even says, Muriel says, like, it has to be you, Dad. Like, you have to be the one to take care of them. They're your children. They're just my siblings, pretty much. So then Muriel gives half of the money back to her dad. So out of the 12,000 she took, she gives 5,000 back. This is from the 10,000 that she just got from David Van Harkel, because he tells her to keep the money. It's yours. And I love this, the quote that she says. She says, "You owe us, Dad. We're not useless. We never were. You're going to tell them that they're not useless. Like, you're going to be there for your kids." And I love how Muriel is finally standing up to her father, because all this time, a lot of what this is like, Muriel has been brought up in this family where her dad was just shitting on his family, and just saying that they're useless. And he's just not that great of a dad, it seemed like, right? And then you see that, like, finally, when everything has kind of fallen around him, Muriel's on her way up. She's trying to get her life back together now. And then now it's just Bill and his kids. And, he's unemployed. He has to go to the dole office and all this. And I just thought that was so interesting. You then find out that Bill apparently grew up on a farm because he talks about how you reap what you sow. And then Muriel pretty much says bye to her dad, and says, I'm going to, go back to Sydney. I'm going to get a job and I'll give you the rest of the money. But I do really like that, you owe us kind of thing. Like, because, yeah, she finally stands up to her dad and says that because she's trying to right all these wrongs, and then you see one of the final scenes, you see Rhonda and the blonde bimbos. So, like, Rhonda is sitting at her house with her mom and, like, the three, blonde friends. And they say that they're going to go to lunch with Rose Biggs and be like, Rose Biggs, but, like, didn't she suck your husband's cock? Well, she did. And it has one of the best lines in. Tanya says, like, well, I sucked her husband's cock, and it made me realize that we all make mistakes, which, is just so insightful for Tanya. I really do. I love that. And then Muriel is coming back to Rhonda to ask her, if she could come back to Sydney with her. Like, I have 2 plane tickets, and I'm willing to go with you if you want to go with me. It doesn't completely remind me of Juno, but, like, how, like, spoiler alert, I guess, but Juno at the end of the movie, she goes and tells Vanessa, Jennifer Garner, she tells her, like, if you're in, I'm in, kind of a thing. Like, this is Muriel going back and being like, hey, I'm here if you're here, and I want to go back and have this life with you. And then Rhonda's like, Rhonda's mom's all like, what makes you think you can come back here and just, you get to come back here and, like, take Rhonda away from the people who care about her. And then, like, Rhonda's like, because she can, yeah. I mean, she actually cares about me. She calls the 3 friends cocksuckers. She says her mom drives her crazy. And she just leaves with Muriel. They get in the car and they get in the taxi and they leave. They're saying goodbye to everything as they're leaving. They say, goodbye, tourists. Goodbye, mall. Goodbye, Porpoise Spit, And all the while, Dancing Queen is playing, and pretty much it's just them all leaving, or it's them 2 leaving, and they're going back to the airport to go to Sydney and have their life together. And one of the notes that I made on my notes is, that from the beginning of the movie where you see Muriel and she looks quite different, in that point, right? And then you see the end of this film and she looks fairly different. You can just tell that her confidence has been better. She grew her confidence. She grew her self-esteem in a way. And she's now feeling really good about herself, which I really love. Because even though, like I stated, Muriel is not a very likable character through most of this movie, but it's not until like the close near the end that she finally realizes like what's important, what she needs to do to like, right her wrongs, and try to live a better life. And I really, really appreciate that story for sure. That's the end of Muriel's Wedding. So, as I stated earlier in this podcast, I really enjoy this movie. To me, it's like, I think PJ Hogan has even said it's like the saddest comedy you'll ever watch. I don't know about all that, but it's definitely a sad movie to me sometimes. You feel a certain way when you watch it, where you're just like, oh God, like this is kind of a downer. But there is some funny parts in there too, as well. So it's not all terrible, but it definitely makes you feel a certain way. But I absolutely think this is such a wonderful movie. If you haven't had the chance to watch it, I think it's so cool too that like I definitely would recommend it. But I think it's so cool too that like PJ Hogan got this movie made and it became a success, which is cool. But then, I mean, he was able to then kind of break into the the American market with My Best Friend's Wedding, which is also a great film too. And I think that this is like Muriel's Wedding and My Best Friend's Wedding are kind of a great little double feature to make, because it's just like highlighting like unlikable female protagonists, flawed heroines, if you will, in your romantic comedy, quote unquote. Because what I love about My Best Friend's Wedding, it's not a typical romantic comedy, and love that. But I think it definitely started a little bit with Muriel's Wedding. And then also even too, like, the fact that ABBA, had their music used in this movie and it became a good success. But like, I definitely think like even earlier in the show, talking about like how it might have helped inspire Mamma Mia. Like I've never really watched Mamma Mia like that. I haven't really been interested to, but like this is like, Mamma Mia, who? I mean, Muriel's Wedding is it for me in that way. So you can currently stream this on Stars if you have a Stars subscription. It's also, I think, free on YouTube in the US. You can find it. I was able to find it somewhere under a YouTube channel. It was for like English movies or something, like British movies or something like that, even though it's Australian. But I found it and I watched it. It was nice. So that's another way you can try to watch it too. I think the only way you can really get this is if maybe if you want to get physical media, like there's a DVD of it, which is fine. There's not really a Blu-ray that I know of or anything. There's no like special collector's edition or anything, but I definitely would highly recommend you going out and treating yourself to Muriel's Wedding. As always, if you'd like to get in contact with me, you can do so at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com in case you wanted to give me any movie recommendations, give feedback on the show, or if you just want to say, hey girl, hey, I'm open to all of it. You can also follow Cult Cinema Circle on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd. You can follow Instagram, Cult Cinema Circle. Twitter is Cult Cinecircle. On those platforms, I tend to just post like when new episodes are coming out, what the next episode will be, and things of that nature. And then on Letterboxd, you can find me at Jesse, Jesse, Kremp, Kremp. I log what movies I watch and write little reviews on there, and just general foolishness over there. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on your podcatcher of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, or wherever you like to listen. Be sure to rate 5 stars and leave a 1 to 2 sentence review. It helps the algorithm be able to show the show to more people and helps grow the show more. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. And remember, you're terrible, Muriel. See ya. Bye.